Good morning again, House Transportation Committee on Thursday, January 16th, 2025. Our next witness is Josh Schultz, and we appreciate you joining us. And we'll continue our education and background portion of our agenda. So it is welcome, and it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to get this rolling here. I'm going to plug this in first.
I'm sure that your presentation's on the committee page for those of you who want to follow along on your computer.
Yes. Okay, perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joshua Schultz. I oversee the Operations and Safety Bureau at VTrans. The Operations Safety Bureau is part of the Highway Division, and I report directly to Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed. So the Operations and Safety Bureau, today I'm going to give you guys an overview of it and what we do and the basic mission. I'm going to spend a little bit more time in the end of their second half of the presentation on safety and also our active transportation team. And the reason I'll spend a little more time on that is that's just been a big focus of our Bureau in the last couple of years. And I just think it would be an important topic to show you folks. Operation of safety it's kind of self-explanatory in one sense, in that if I was in an elevator, I would say that what we do is we make sure that drivers get from point A to point B safely and on time and reliably. And it's the main part of our mission and vision at the Agency of Transportation. You can see I've just highlighted that. I'm not going to read the mission and vision, but you folks can see that it's a pretty key component of what we do at the agency. We're organized in 5 sections. So we have, and the Bureau is actually a kind of an eclectic Bureau, but it all knits together perfectly. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking that you folks will see that. First off, we have our traffic signals and our intelligent transportation systems section, or you'll hear sometimes maybe ITS, that's intelligent transportation systems. And I'm going to go into some more detail on what these different sections do, but I'm just going to give you, again, kind of the elevator speech on each one right now. Signals, we operate and maintain them. We make sure they're timed properly. ITS, think electronic devices next to the road that are giving us information. That information would be things like the cameras that are taking snapshots of the interstate that you folks, a lot of the public look at to see what the road conditions are. We're getting pavement temperatures, getting wind speeds. All this information is gathered and used for the maintenance of the road, but also how the road is operating, meaning what's the traffic looking like. Moving over to traffic operations, these folks primarily think right sign, right place, and right pavement marking, right place. We're feeding these folks are feeding information to drivers on their day-to-day commutes to make sure they can get to where they need to get to. In the middle, you'll see the Transportation Management Center, or you'll probably hear me as I'm talking. I'll refer to this as the TMC. These folks it's a 24/7, 365 operation. They're in a room and they are monitoring our network and our system. And when things go wrong, or primarily when they go wrong, when they go right, we're happy. We get that information, and this hub, I'd say communications hub, make sure the right people are notified to deal with that situation. Our safe systems section, I'm going to go into this one and like I mentioned, in much greater detail, so I'm just going to quickly brush on it. It's pretty safe, self-explanatory, but it's the main unit, the main section within the agency that drives safety, in the safety culture too. And again, more detail on that to come. And our data management unit, everything we do in this Bureau is based on data. So we really strive to make data-driven decisions, and whether that be traffic volume data, which I would think like mobility, getting people from point A to point B reliably, or of course safety data. What's the crash data look like out there? So this is the main unit within the Highway Division that looks at all those particularly important data sets. So key OSB, again, Operations and Safety Bureau. So key OSB principles. These are kind of like our guiding lights of what we do on a day-to-day basis and how our minds are kind of geared. So highly customer focused. We're constantly working with the public. We're definitely, I would say, within the highway division, if not the front line, we're definitely one of the front lines. Every day we're communicating with the public, whether it be via Facebook, whether it be putting message boards on the interstate and lighting them up and giving them messages. You guys have probably seen, you guys know the holiday messages that are out there. That's what most people think of, but they're used for all kinds of safety messages beyond our funny messages that we're hoping resonate with folks. Again, I mentioned we're data driven. We're always looking at data. So when we're looking at new initiatives and trying to do things better, we're like, what does the data tell us? Existing footprint. In Vermont, generally speaking, we're not building brand new roads on brand new alignments. So our team thinks about mobility and how can we use what we have efficiently. And so we're constantly feeding into that. And of course, we're geared towards preserving the capacity of our current infrastructure that's out there, the roads that are out there. Safety, again, pretty self-explanatory. Multimodal, we don't just think about cars and trucks and tractor trailer trucks. We're thinking about the bicyclists. We're thinking about folks that are on skateboards. We're thinking about walkers and runners. So it's everything under the sun and getting folks from point A to point B. And of course, cross-jurisdictional. The drivers out there, or I would say road users or sidewalk users, generally they don't know whether they're under in a state jurisdiction area or a municipal jurisdiction area as far as the roads. And honestly, they don't really care and they shouldn't. So we really focus on making sure it's a smooth transportation network, no matter what, for the drivers. So we are constantly working with municipalities all across the state so that the drivers, when they're going down the road, it's just a smooth. They don't even know the difference between whether we're on the state network or the county networks. A typical day for us is on the operating side, the operations side of our network. We're just providing information to drivers. We're making sure our traffic signals are all operated and maintained. We're making sure our data collection systems are all working. We're sort of humming, and this is, again, I'm focusing on the operating side of the Operations and Safety Bureau right now. And on days like today, probably doesn't look to be a lot of challenging weather out there, but a couple days ago we had a lot of snow out there on the roads you all saw. And we are making sure that the technology we have on the roads are feeding our plow drivers and maintenance workers the information they need so they know where to go and get the product down on the road so we can help the drivers. We also work with the anticipated travel disruptions, so things that we know are coming. So a perfect example that is fresh in everybody's mind is the eclipse. We knew it was coming. So this bureau, the Operations Safety Bureau, we worked really hard. We were a main part of that. We weren't the only part. There was a big team that gathered. That was obviously probably one of the biggest events in Vermont, and certainly with the traffic. But we worked hard to make sure we were identifying the areas on our road network that were beyond capacity, which there were many. And try to minimize the delay. And sometimes you can't minimize the delay. So in those cases, you just got to get the best information you can out to the public so then they can make informed decisions. And so we're constantly working with towns and working with entities, bicycle races, things like that, that are going to be a disruption to the traveling public. And how can we work with them so that they can have their event? They're important to Vermonters. They're important to everyone, that the participants for sure. But we also have to balance that with the drivers. And so we work with them on that. Then we also have unanticipated travel disruptions. And that's like things like tomorrow I wake up in the morning, I open up my email and I find an email from Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed that says there's a sinkhole in the interstate. And I need to make sure that he's emailing probably many people at that point, but our job is to make sure that we work with all of the entities that are involved to try to get traffic around that. So whether it be setting up a really fast work zone so they can go around it, or even working with the maintenance folks to get a detour in place. And we have the expertise in our area to know where that detour needs to go, to look at the data, to look at the traffic volumes and say, this will work. And then if we have to, we can even go out there and retime traffic signals to accommodate the additional traffic. So there's a lot of moving parts, and we're a major part of that. Again, we get the information to travelers. We use in our bureau and in the agency, we use a manual. It's written by the Federal Highway Administration. It's the manual on uniform traffic control devices. And this is an overarching manual that all states around the country use, and it maintains consistency. So again, I talked about cross-jurisdictional within Vermont. Well, it's the same in our over the whole country, in that if people come from New Hampshire into Vermont and then into Massachusetts, they shouldn't really see a difference in the signage and how it flows. It's all consistent, and that's what that manual does. So that's our guiding light within our team. But things like crosswalks, pavement markings, speed limits. We also into the mobility side, again, the operations side, we have a main part in setting speed limits on our state routes. And of course, there's a process for that. An entity called the Traffic Committee. We certainly make recommendations, but ultimately the Traffic Committee decides that. Moving along here. Again, I mentioned traffic signals and ITS. I mentioned already, but we maintain our traffic signals. We make sure they're optimized. Traffic volumes and turning movements, and what turning movements means is how many cars are turning right, how many are turning left, how many are going through at any given intersection. And there's 4 legs to the intersection. So there's a lot of data there that we capture. And we have to make sure that as traffic volumes change, as developments are put in, as businesses come up, we got to make sure that we're able to accommodate those and get people through those intersections as efficiently as possible. So we take pride in spending a lot of time on our network to do just that. And of course, I mentioned the weather information system, the stations that we have out there that are gathering the information. And then finally, I also mentioned it, but I think it bears repetition, is the images of mainly the interstate. It's not always on the interstate, but mainly the interstate. The public really like those images especially this time of year. So they go on to our 511 site and they look at what are the road conditions before they even have to leave their front door. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So along this line of the cameras and the traffic signals, if we have constituent questions or we have questions from the committee piece, how do we go about addressing or dealing with that? Because this is a pretty popular, public facing, often asked. If you haven't yet, you're going to get.
Yeah, certainly. So if you have questions about traffic signals, and we get many from legislators, you can forward them, you can email them. Oftentimes they'll come to the chief engineer's office. And so you certainly have Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed, but you also will have my email at the end of this presentation. I think you all have that. You can certainly email me directly as well, and you can send them to me. And I will say that while we get a lot of inquiries about signal timing and, hey, we have a constituent that got stopped in a light for, 2 minutes, 2 cycles, it's not working. I will say sometimes, and many times, I'd say probably the majority, they're on signals that we don't own and maintain. And so, but we know that others don't. And so again, the cross-jurisdictional piece, we take it upon ourselves to know who is the owner of those traffic signals, and we make sure that they that we can get that question diverted to the right people. While I'm on that, I will say that there are times, if we have the resources and the time available, we work with towns. So we'll go out there and we'll work with them on their signals. We can't always do it because we have a lot of signals within the state system that we have to maintain and we have to take care of, but it's not unheard of for us on occasion to go out there and work with towns, especially some of these smaller towns that might have like 1 signal. So we do what we can. It's not perfect. We have limitations, but we do what we can. And but so in that situation, that's what I would encourage you to do. You'll have my contact, and you also certainly have the chief engineer's contact too. So we'll help you all out in the public, of course, however we can.
Thank you. So on that same. So in our town, we have several signals and things, the state. I know our town administrator gets typically the email that says, hey, the crosswalk's not working or whatever. Is there a place that for town administrators or anybody that can go and here's where you give your complaint rather than an email to either of you? Is there a funneling spot that when there's a problem, it goes to the right person.
On our website, yes, there is a link there where folks can write in, and it gets and those also come to me, and it goes to, it won't come to that, in that case, it won't come directly to me. It will go to one of our administrative assistants, and they'll take it, and they know who to divert it to. So that's another easy button for you. People can certainly do that, and it will get to me in my desk too. So yes, you're welcome. All right. I'm going to move on to the Transportation Management Center, and I mentioned this is a 24/7, 365 operation. And these folks are, as I mentioned before, they're really looking at all the data that we have out there along our roads, and they're making sure that data is used again for people to get to where they need to. This group also, they're the ones that are responsible for lighting up our message boards. So all of those messages comes out of this group. At times, another example I'll just use is at times like I'll use exit 10 as an example on I-89. During certain events, sometimes the traffic backs up, and that's not the only exit on the interstate system in Vermont that backs up, but the traffic will actually back up onto the interstate. And there's many others. I'm just, again, that's a good one because it's just close by to here. During those times, we'll get that information off off the systems that are out there and available to us. Or just from a state trooper or anybody that might call in and let us know. And then what we're able to do is we'll light up boards in the appropriate locations, just letting people know, stop traffic ahead. Or if there's a crash somewhere, stop traffic ahead. So these are all like tools that we use to help get that information to drivers.
Yeah, we had such an interesting trip to that center a couple of years ago.
Yes, I was there for it. Yes.
Yeah, that's really sorry.
Always happy to entertain visitors. So, and I have another slide here for the TMC, the Transportation Management Center, and this is actually a picture of the day of the eclipse. And you can see they're looking at the heat map that I'll call it a heat map. It's different routes. It's not every route in the state for sure, but you can see a lot of red on there. You can see some green. This is us. We're looking at that heat map, and that's near real-time data. And so again, the event of the eclipse, there's a lot of traffic. We are trying to, I'll put it like in these terms, a lot of water trying to go through a really small straw. And there's not a lot you can do about it in that situation. But we got that information and we're able to share that with the public. And also we're able to share that with our emergency responders so they know what's all, mucked up out there on our system. And if you have to make a call, you're gonna have to go around this spot somehow. And so they take that intel, and this center hub, we kind of see the whole big picture. So I thought that was a good picture, kind of demonstrating a non-typical day, but a day in our TMC. So I'm going to shift over to safety now. Safety has seen a lot of exciting change, I would say, in the last couple of years. And one big change that we made is we've adopted organizationally the safe systems approach, and we actually call it the safe systems section. So I'm going to explain to you guys about what is safe systems. What does that mean? So safe systems is not a term that we create in Vermont. It's a term that's used broadly across the country. And really what safe systems looks at is it looks at a variety of factors and components that all feed into the safety of our drivers. And so I'm going to read them because it's a good thing to read. So safer people. People, there are vulnerable road users out there. How do we keep them safe? Safer vehicles. We know technology is out there. Our cars, seems like every day, every year for sure, our cars are getting safer. Now we're hearing about driverless vehicles, and that's getting louder and louder, I would say, sort of in our windscreen in front of us, and it's coming. So driverless vehicles, but even like the cars that automatically kind of put the seatbelt on. Remember those back in maybe the 90s or early 2000s? Our tire technology, things like that. Our cars are getting safer. Safer speeds. How do we encourage people to drive slower? And then of course, safer roads. We have our infrastructure out there. We all know, we live in Vermont, so we all know that Vermont has plenty of challenges with its roads. We have a lot of windy roads, a lot of hills, and we have to work with that system. And So how do we make our roads safer? And then, of course, post-crash care is if there is a crash out there, how do we help get people to where they need to get to quicker so we can save lives? And all of these are layers that are these different factors I just named off. These are all layers that all work together. And if they're all working perfectly, our roads will be safer. And so we focus on each of them and within our bureau to try to achieve that mission. So Safe Systems recognizes that we have a complicated road network out there. Our system, it's not simple. There's a lot of moving parts to it. We also recognize that, as I mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts out there. There's a lot of layers, and what we're trying to do is prevent the crashes from happening before they happen. And then if they do happen, how do we minimize harm to those drivers? How do we get them where they need to get to? We focus on infrastructure, on behavior, just sort of overarching. And then, of course, working with our transportation, the transportation industry, so the car manufacturers, but also the emergency response. And I will say, if I was going to identify one of the weaker areas right now in this, I would say working with the safer vehicles component. We certainly are plugged in across the country. We go to conferences and such and weigh in with information that we have. And there are vehicle manufacturers there, but I'm not driving to the Ford or flying to the Ford plant to talk to the engineers over there. This is a national discussion that's being had. I will say, however, a couple of years ago, I got a call from Michelin Tires, and one of the executive folks up there. They were interested in using one of what they thought was going to be a safer tire in Vermont, and they were asking me some questions about the Department of Motor Vehicle laws, and would this tire be acceptable here? So I worked with them and connected them with DMV, and the three of us had a really interesting and informative phone conversation. And that was actually an exciting small little project I had. And just to give you guys a couple examples. Safe Systems within Vermont in our I would say our newly created Safe Systems section. This was created about nearly a year ago, probably not quite a year ago. What we did is we combined our infrastructure safety team. So again, think intersections and roadways and the curves on our roadways. The team that focused on that, we combined them with our behavioral safety team this team was working primarily with law enforcement entities and education entities, Department of Health. And those teams are now combined into one group, and they're working together hand in hand every day. And then we also added into that our active transportation team. That's the bike and pedestrian and any kind of mode that involves folks exerting themselves, so to speak. That they're all working together now. And of course, the active transportation is very focused on safety. And so these three teams are now together, meeting every day, talking every day. And what we've done by what we've achieved, I would say, by organizationally making this change, better coordination between those entities, but also better coordination within the agency. So we are constantly working, and we always were before, but it's even better now, working with our designers. I believe that you guys may have already heard from our project delivery team, but we work with them on their projects and identifying problem corridors, problem areas, and how can we make them better? And then they can execute that with their projects and what they actually do. So I'm going to shift to the infrastructure side of the house for a second here. You all may have heard this, some of you, and some of you maybe not. So I'll explain it to you. So the Highway Safety Improvement Program, or HSIP, this is a program. This phrase right there, again, it's not local just to Vermont. This is a phrase that's used all across the country. Every state has this program. And really what it focuses on is infrastructure safety, so safer roads in that circle we were just looking at. But it also administers safety money, and we call it HSIP money. And that's money that's set aside. It comes from the FHWA, and it's set aside just to focus on safety. And I mentioned data driven. This is a perfect example of data. So we look at crashes, we look at We don't just look at crash volumes or even the crash severity. I have people on my team that probably go blue in the face looking at the actual crash reports. And so we really dig down deep into what caused each individual crash when we're trying to identify, like, what is the next best place for us to, spend safety money and responsibly for the public. So everything I'm about to say and talk about with the HSIP program, it's based on data. We identify the road safety problems, and then we strategically identify how to best spend those HSIP funds. We have an overarching plan that we use, and this plan is called the Strategic Highway Safety Plan. It's on the internet. You can get it through our website, the agency, but also if you wanted to look at it, you're interested, you can certainly just Google Strategic Highway Safety Plan Vermont, and it'll pop up for you guys. So you guys, if you're interested, can read that. And this plan goes into depth on exactly what the main areas of concern are in Vermont. And again, it's all based on data. And if you read that plan, you'll see just that. There's 11, and we call them critical emphasis areas. There's 11 of them identified in the plan. And these emphasis areas are not just infrastructure, they also bridge into the behavioral side. And there's the last critical emphasis area is actually data, getting better data. And I can't stress that enough. The decisions we make and have made are based on data, and they're as good as the data that we have. So the better quality data we get, the better informed we are to make better decisions. And we have good data, but it's not perfect. So this team is also, in addition to all of these, but we're also developing a network screening tool, we call it, and I'm going to put that in English for you all. It's basically a tool that evaluates all of the crash data out there and runs it through iterations and kind of essentially, and it's not quite as simple as I'm going to make it, but I'm going to make it sound really simple. You kind of would hit a button and it would tell you, like, with this amount of money you all have, these are the best places you guys have to spend your safety money. I extremely oversimplified that just now, and it's not that easy. And we're working on it. It's not developed, but we are doing network screening right now. It's just not with this big overarching software that you can hit that button. We are going through the data, and we are absolutely screening our network and making data-driven decisions even now, and have been doing that for years. Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a clarification. This program, these are eligible for 100% federal funding?
Yes.
Yes, which is pretty rare. So this is one of the things that you find the safety program.
Yep.
It's 100% federal. So that's always a good thing in our committee. We're looking at state dollars. So I just wanted to point that out.
Would you have any, as an illustrative example of, I mentioned 11 of the most critical areas of safety?
I do.
Do you have any info on that?
I do. You're gonna see a couple. I have a couple in a future slide. I don't know if it won't be the next one, but yes, they're coming. Yes, sir.
And my understanding is each state has a highway safety person.
So the organizations for different states vary. In Vermont, we have a safety engineer that actually oversees the safe system section. And so they're focused on HSIP and other areas of safety, including the behavioral side, which I'll get into in a bit. But generally, yes, every state has at least one safety engineer or safety person that oversees their program.
And that one person's identified for the federal government as the highway safety point of contact? Is
Yes. In Vermont, I can speak for Vermont, yes.
Yeah. And who would that be?
Jesse Devlin.
Okay,
You've probably seen Jesse here before, and yes.
We'll see him again. I'm sure.
Yep. And Jesse and I work together. Jesse and I talked this morning before I came here. So Jesse and I are tight, and as a matter of fact, he's working right now on road safety initiatives. So I'm going to get to a couple examples of critical emphasis areas. I'm just showing this. I just wanted to give you all a sense, and you may have seen this in the secretaries. I don't know if this slide was in there or not, exactly the slide, but it's just to kind of show you really big picture, some of the stuff we're looking at with safety. But this is just it's showing the fatalities across 1 year of time, and it's going over from 2018 to 2025. So it's 2025, obviously, this is calendar year. So we're in mid-January. So, that is way over here. I don't know if you can see my cursor when I do this. Can you? Does it show up back there? It doesn't. So on the far left, there's where 2025 is. You can't even see it yet. But on the far right, if you look over there, you can see that any given year, you can see where the fatalities are. You'll see it shows up kind of as a burgundy line with the squares. That's the last year, 2024. We had 58 fatalities. And so you can kind of see how that stacks up with the previous years. The black line in the bottom that says 47 on it, that's 2019. That was one of the best years we've had. Now, I say best years. I don't say that lightly because 47 deaths is tragic. So we're certainly not happy about that. But as you stack it up against the other years, it was better than 76, which was the higher year in 2022. So
Yeah, thanks again. This is all good data. Spending some time with looking at national data too. I mean, there is some discussion of while deaths are tragic and obviously, our key focus, that the number of actual accidents, because deaths are driven down by much safer cars with all of our airbags, much faster emergency response. So while this is certainly a measurement of how good we're doing overall, I mean, the number of actual crashes where a death may have been, may have happened, but didn't happen. That data also would be good. And I do believe it's on the website where you can look at a particular intersection and it's given a color coding.
yes.
Yeah, it'd be good to see that. Yeah, so because I'm sure we're all interested in our local areas and where the problems are.
Yes, and that's accessible. Again, you go on our website. You all can access that. I will say that the other challenge we have is, and this to your point, the other challenge we have is that with this data and fatality data, while every single fatality is tragic, the numbers are, when you look at statistics, they're on the lower side, statistically speaking. And so what happens is if you have even 10 fatalities, which again, it's challenging to talk about this because we're talking about lives here, but it can really change the data and this chart immensely. And so what we do is while we have a strong focus on this and we're looking at this data, it's certainly not blind. We're not blind to it. We do look at overarching crashes because there's a much bigger data set there. And so that helps us make data-driven decisions, probably since it's spending that money a little bit more wisely. However, there are times when we have certain corridors where all of a sudden, we get, for whatever reason, we get, say, 5 fatalities on them with different crashes. And that gets our attention fast. And we go out there and we look at what's going on here. A lot of times it's behavior stuff. It's not necessarily infrastructure, but that as it may be, we still get out there and how can we help drivers make better decisions? You'd ask about critical emphasis areas. There is no rhyme or reason why I picked this one. I picked it. It's impaired driving, and I just wanted to give you guys a flavor. Again, this is all available to you, but this is a critical emphasis area. I would say like kind of dashboard about impaired driving and what that looks like, and with the data we have available to us. And I'm not going to go into detail and talk about the individual portions of this slide, but I wanted to show you just kind of as a general guiding light, like this is the kind of information we're gathering and we're collating and analyzing to help us make those decisions out there. So impaired driving, I have another one I'm going to show you all after this one here. This is distracted driving. So again, this is showing us the distracted driving data in Vermont. Distracted driving, I picked this one, and I do want to say one thing, because I mentioned earlier about data quality. This is a good example of where I question the data quality on this. And I think if you I can't speak for law enforcement, but I think if you talk to law enforcement, they would probably agree with me in that it's a hard thing to prove. And so when you come up on a crash site, you know, you can talk to the drivers and find out if were they on their cell phone, what were they doing, and they may or may not tell you. And so it's kind of hard for them to always, you know, check that box on their crash report as to whether this was a distracted driving, you know, the causal factor was distracted driving. They do the best they can. And we take that information and we do the best we can with it. But we all kind of acknowledge that it's probably an underreported factor, causal factor in our crashes. It's hard to prove, but we're doing the best we can right now to gather that information. So.
Representative Burke?
Yeah, just, I'm curious on these charts, the last number, is that like what you're hoping for? What's?
No, the last number that you see, and I think that is what we have so far, this, showing up, I think, and I'm looking at that.
89
Yeah.
so far in 2025?
I'm looking. I can't, I'm having trouble
I'm
seeing
looking
it.
at the impaired driving,
Oh, okay.
up at the top, the white little.
Yeah, I think, okay, so I think that is, no, I think, and I have to tell you, I've got to verify this. I think what that's doing is I think it's trying to do the statistics of like, based on the trends, this is where we expect it to hit.
Okay, that's what I
But
thought.
we don't, but you know, until that data gets populated,
I think you
we
had
can't.
89. I
Yeah,
was hoping you didn't
Cor-
have 89 cents.
correct. And I apologize. My screen, it's really small, so and so the statistics and our algorithms are working right now. But you'll see like down at the bottom, there's nothing even showing on that bar chart yet. So next year we'll be able to see where how we landed on that.
You're all set, Mom? I was sure you're all set.
Yeah,
Representative Burke.
thank you.
Was there anything in particular about the map and that data on that one that you were just discussing with Representative Burke? Is there anything in there that you point out to us or that you feel that you always take a look at, or something about it that anything that we might want to file away in our memory? Obviously, is it because of the population, the different colors, or are there particularly areas of law enforcement that are more active in terms of, is there anything that you might know than what I get at a quick glance of that? Or what does it tell you, I guess, if that's okay? If you don't comfortable with that question, we can move on too. I'm just kind of curious what studying this impaired data tells you about Vermonters' activity and or how it relates to our infrastructure. Is it more behavior? Is it infrastructure? What's it telling us as far as these projects that we're going next?
Yeah, so the map, you're talking about this map over here?
The map or the chart?
Yeah, so what it tells us, it gives us an idea, it gives us a sense on trend. And so in the case of impaired driving, it's certainly, we can click on the map over there. I can't do it now. It's not a live,
Right.
This isn't live, but if I was on our website, I could click over there in different counties and it would show us the different areas there and it would kind of give you a general sense of heat map. And so we take that data. And then in case of impaired driving, we would work heavily with the law enforcement entities. And we have partnerships with all of them. So in this case, and they're part of our different, we have it's called the Safety Alliance, a team that we have that looks at things like this. And so not only do we work with them sort of verbally, but we also are able to grant them funds. And so we can actually make a difference out there with money and get them money so they can actually pay, I'll say, the sheriff's departments to go out there and do increased patrols and enforcement to try to help the impaired driving issue. So in strategically across the state. So we don't have to just blanket the whole state because we don't have enough resources to do that with law enforcement. But we can look at this data and say, you know what, these are the areas that we really need to focus on right now based on the data. And then we can allocate funds accordingly for that. Again, the funds are, we have limitations on those, but we have the ability to make a difference out there for those. Now, taking a step beyond that, also, we do educational campaigns. So you've probably heard of the Drive Well Vermont. I'm hoping that maybe you guys have seen some of those public service announcements out there. That's another thing we can do. We can even set up, we have done this before more than once, several times actually, where we actually can, we can use geographical location and actually target certain geographical areas of our state with public service announcements on social media and other sort of like electronic computer platforms. And so those areas will get hit a little harder with those messages. And so we have the ability to really try to do our best to just educate people to make better decisions out there. Don't drive impaired. And so, yeah, all this data is used strategically for that. And that's kind of speaking to the behavioral side there, of course. Infrastructure on impaired driving, I would probably say, is generally not the main reason, or yeah.
Location of the facilities.
Yeah.
Representative Corbett.
Just a quick question on these numbers. Are the people that are impaired that causes, the sality, are they grouped together or are they sort of separated? Like if somebody, is drinking and driving and kills two innocent, victims, are they sort of lumped into this number?
I'm not sure I understand the question, I guess.
Well, the fatalities is 107. Were those purely the people that were in the car that caused the damage, or is that number made up of the car that they hit too, that they?
Yes, it's made up of of the cars. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just wondering sort of like the breakdown. I mean, not that it really matters, fatality is fatality, but
Yeah.
you can see the impact
Yes.
of the innocent people that were killed and not sort of grouped into the person or persons that
Yes.
did that.
Yes. And to the crash report point I made too, when we are looking at crash reports, we can see all of that information very, very plainly. And so that also helps us to kind of understanding okay, there was, maybe it was one impaired driver and it was three innocent individuals that lost their lives as a result of that impaired driver. So that helps us sort of okay, these are three innocents here and there was one impaired driver that was, at fault. And
It'd be interesting to see that data that broken out like that. I think it really would hits home, or at least it would be.
of actual, the victim.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Representative White, are you all set?
Yeah.
Representative White.
Just to follow up on that, I mean, just looking at the data, what stands out to me is the male versus female ratio, 70% males fatalities and serious injuries versus 29% for females. So I would imagine in your public service announcements,
It does.
you're sharing that information. And I'd love this, I mean, it looks like we can do a sort by age. So I tend to think about young males.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that helps us. I apologize.
I couldn't see for sure which one, without having, from here, I couldn't tell where you were in but I'm all set. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And that helps us with, and all of this data, again, I can't stress enough. We use the data and that helps us when we work with contractors on developing our public service announcements. But we really want high quality, announcements out there. Then again, the Drive Well Vermont campaign is a perfect one. It's quality. And they have experts that can look at demographics and who do we target. And so they have access, we share this data with them, of course. And so hey, these are the target, this is our target audience here. Again, it's based on the data. So you'll probably hear me say based on the data too many times, but it's important and it's kind of what makes us tick. So that's again why I kind of wanted to show you these slides. I really want these slides shown just to kind of drive that point home that we have a lot of ways we can slice and dice this and we use it, but certainly all these topics are really interesting just to go into the impaired driving, and I could probably, just impaired driving alone and distracted driving too. So I'm going to roll into, the State Highway Safety Office, and State Highway Safety Office is a common terminology used all across the country. Behavioral safety teams, this is what they call themselves, the State Highway Safety Office. But really think behavioral safety. And again, these people on this team, they report to Jesse Devlin, and they all work. This team focuses on the behavioral side. And really what we're trying to do when I say behavior is just, we want people to make good decisions when they get in their vehicles. Whatever that vehicle may be, or if they're on a bicycle, or if they're walking or running or whatever it may be. So I kind of touched on a lot of this already, but I'll just kind of blow through these quickly here for you. But media campaigns, we've talked about that. We're constantly working with law enforcement. We even have 2 law enforcement liaisons on our staff that are retired state troopers. They work with sheriffs, with local police, and of course Vermont State Police as well. We know them many times on a first name basis, and they know us on a first name basis. So we have a really good connection and coordination with them. We Our prosecutors, we work with them. There's a drug recognition expert program, the DRE program. This is driven by the state police, but we work with we work with them as well and help even with some of the funding side of that as well. Forensics laboratory program funding for that. Education, we're working with the Department of Education a lot. Drivers education, all of that. Trying to teach drivers when they're young or any age, doesn't matter, but how to educate them. And of course, distracted driving is the main focus of us, especially, the last maybe decade now. And then I don't need to say anything more about data, I don't think. So this is the team. And the other thing I guess I will just add to this before I move on to the next, which is going to be active transportation. I guess I'll just kind of cap this off in that our behavioral safety side, we do also get money from the federal government. And it's money that's set aside specifically, again, for behavior. It's and so that money comes into us, and then we're able to grant that money out to sub-grantees. So it gets given to us, and then we kind of make sure it gets given to the right people out there. And again, a lot of times that's law enforcement folks, Department of Health, Department of Education, and just the entities out there that are trying to help people make better choices. And then, of course, the media campaigns, et cetera. I'm going to shift over to active transportation, and this is the last part of my presentation here. Active transportation is an important part of what we do, and it's really also seen a lot of maturity in the last, I'd say the last about a year now, maybe 2 years, I'd say, but especially over this past year. Under Chief Engineer Jeremy Reed's leadership, we actually added the active transportation team as part of our safety group because safety is such a major focus of what that team does. And so when I talk about active transportation, think about safety. Number one, a lot of decisions are driven by safety, but also think about mobility, the connectivity, these folks that are out there. And a lot of times I'm going to oversimplify it a little bit, but if we can, for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to talk about like bicyclists and pedestrians, knowing there's other types of forms of active transportation. The bicyclists and pedestrians, they need to be able to get from point A to point B. So we've got to provide them a network that's safe. And then also just think collaboration. This team is constantly working with other entities. We are not in a bubble, sitting in our home offices. Where we're located. We're located up in the Dill building, of course. But we're not sitting over there working on these initiatives and not talking to other groups. We have a whole network of people that we're working with on this subject. We don't need to spend a lot of time on this. I think it's kind of self-explanatory, but why walking? Why biking? And of course, it's affordable. This checks off a lot of boxes here for Vermont and our mission. It's affordable. It serves our vulnerable populations. Greenhouse gas reduction kind of speaks for itself. More physical activity, healthier people. That's always good. Economic development, getting people, so they're not in their vehicles just driving through. They're out walking. They're out biking. And how could we promote that and help our local businesses thrive? And then it also kind of plays into key component of successful downtowns and village centers. Get people connected and right there. So
This, thank you, Josh.
Yes,
It's
sir.
an area that I'm a little bit out of my element, but I feel like I want to, for the newer members and and I'm a newer member, but from what I've been, as I was prepped for this and whatnot, as you're in committee and as you're working with the agency and learning about their piece, what I've been told is that this is an area, as an example, that many of the representatives, and some of them have been here a while, have helped and pushed and added and keep. And my understanding is some X number of years ago, even the discussion of other modes than getting cars through towns as fast and getting people to their delivery as much as fast as possible was the mission of the agency or of the state at one time. And it has developed or changed over time to being far more encompassing and understanding the complete use. And it's people that have sat in your chairs that have worked and helped bring that perspective and whatnot. And it may not be the best example, but trying to understand some of the spot of how you want to influence, and it's not going to happen necessarily right away, but I was told that this is something that's been a major evolution of the whole agency, and maybe Representative Burke could give us a little bit on that. But I want you to understand as members how you can influence over time. And Representative, if you're willing, I'd love for you to speak to that a little
I
bit.
totally agree with you. I feel that the agency has really come a long way to understanding the effective multimodal transportation. We need all modes of transportation. I worked on the Complete Streets bill in 2011 with the ARP. They were pushing a bill that meant that every new transportation project need to incorporate the needs of all users of the transportation system. I think I was the only one who voted for the bill in committee. Somehow, I guess we got it out. I don't remember how that happened, but it was supported by the governor. And we got that passed. And the agency would only agree to consider the need of all users of the transportation. But that was a big lift.
Yes.
And AARP was really pushing it because of looking at the aging population and how are people going to get around. And so they were a great partner to work with. And I think there was also some, as things happen here, some push from an influential person in Burlington who knew Senator Mazza. He said he'd never speak to him again if we didn't pass it. So it's always interesting to think about like how things happen here and how things get passed and the historical perspective too. So I really appreciate what V-Trans has evolved into. It's great partners.
Thank you.
I'll give my own example. In Heinsberg, been there, over 30 years. And the population really hasn't changed much. Downtown or the village area, it's expanded a little bit. The population is about the same. I mean, we had one little tiny sidewalk, not a crosswalk across 116. I know some citizens in the middle of the night we tried to get one. They put one up in the middle of the night just to have, so you get from the store to the library. But today, while there's a lot more we need to do, I see kids walking to school, lots of them. And, we have 3 crosswalks now and some infrastructure on new projects that have come through that have added, the crosswalk buttons and whatnot. So we do see a change. And I also just anecdotally, personally, I'm on these sidewalks almost every day, see far more people using them. The elderly, then we have a new elderly project that's come in, and in anticipation of that, we put in a lighted beacon for the crosswalk there. So, we do see changes. Sometimes it feels like it's very slow, but certainly has changed, and it appears as AOT comes in to look at things, they're incorporating some of these, much needed and desired things in our village anyways.
I guess I'll just add Representative Burks, you mentioned like, how did we get that passed? And it was your steadfastness, to keep that piece of legislation going. Sometimes when you throw out an idea, one's initial reaction is to say, yeah, no, that's not happening. Well, you listen to the concerns of the committee members and you tweak those in, and that's exactly what Representative Burke did initially when that was put forth. It was sort of a mandate on the towns, and there was really no out. So what we did is saying if it was too cumbersome monetarily for the town, they didn't have to abide by Complete Streets, and that got everybody on board. But that was, something that Representative Burke took on and took the lead on that. And I think everybody's thankful, especially the state of Vermont, moved forward on that. So it's about teamwork. So when somebody says no initially, just go back to the drawing board and hear their concerns and exactly what you
You
did.
never do anything by yourself.
So, yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
so.
So if you have a visions, as we're kind of trying to build towards what we're going to have to get done in here, it takes a lot of time, but it can be done. And you have ideas of what you come to this committee for or whatnot. It may not happen right away, but as you are able to steer the ship a little bit, kind of every day or every session or every piece. So I appreciate the interruption of going in a little bit of a different direction, and I appreciate those that have a little bit more perspective on it, have made some significant impacts for the betterment of Vermonters and their community working through these type of ideas. So thank you, and let's get back to where we were.
Okay. And also just mentioned AARP. AARP is still a major partner of ours. So we work with them every day. So, you know, every week, I guess I would say, certainly we maintain that connection very closely. And actually kind of this feeds right into the discussion that you all just had. So this is the evolution. And you can kind of see, like I really like this slide because you can kind of see the compression in the last few years of growth and maturity that this program and just active transportation in general has seen. So I don't know that I'm not going to go into detail on every single one of these green boxes, but you know, it came from having, you know, one bicycle pedestrian coordinator in our agency. And I'm going to keep kind of climbing here, and you'll see that 2011, our Complete Streets Law that was passed. And that was basically that the needs of all users needs to be considered on all projects. And that was back in 2011. But then since then, we've continued to ramp up and renew our focus. And really, we're at that point now, just a very strong renewed focus and commitment to active transportation. We have our strategic plan that was developed in 2021. We use that on a day-to-day basis. It's not sometimes plans get created and they don't get used as much as we want them to be used. This is one that really gets used, and it helps us make our decisions. And then of course we have in 2023, we talked about Complete Streets. We have a guidance document that was developed in 2023. We are training people right now. This past year, 2024, we spent a lot of time and effort training our designers on this Complete Streets, this guidance document and what it is, making sure all our designers understand the language, understand the mission and the focus. So when they're working on projects, they all have that in their heads. And we've certainly also spent some time even training our regional planning commissions. And I believe in the future that training initiative is just going to continue to expand to other areas. The municipalities have access to that document, and some of them use it. And so we're able to kind of take all of our legwork that we've done with Complete Streets, and we're able to make that available to others in these towns that, you know, they don't have a lot of money. They don't have the money to develop a plan like that, but we've done it for them. And so they can look at that and they can take it. And then a reporting tool was created in 2024. So we have that. We have all of our project managers that work on projects. They report on how these different needs and these other users were considered in their projects. So that's all getting captured, and we're looking at that. And we've actually, and in 2024, I'm on the far right side of that screen now. We have a partner alliance. I'm going to talk to it in a little bit here, but we have an alliance formed up with other entities across the state that have a focus on active transportation. We work with them, and we make sure we're all just in lockstep with one another. It's an important topic, and it's one that we need to all be on the same page on across the state, not just the state of the Agency of Transportation, but all these different entities. And how can we work together to really be strategic? And you know, everybody's again, we go to like limited resources. So how do we work together so that we can have the best impact for safety and for mobility for this important mode of travel? I'm going to keep going here because we have some other slides here that I think that will help too, but just kind of our vision and mission. And this is just, I'm going to put this kind of in maybe plain English, but really what we're working to do right now, the active transportation team, is just a renewed focus and commitment. And it's been the case for the last couple of years. And I think it was pretty evident in the green block slide I just showed you. And really just getting that focus renewed and commitment renewed, and really just building alliances and building a sort of a network of champions, so to speak, that are advancing this whole initiative. And then we work with all the folks that are like achieving that goal, whether it be designers or whether it be planners, regional planning commissions. It doesn't matter where you sit, where you work. We want to work with you. So just kind of the main areas of responsibility, I would say, of the active transportation team. And I didn't mention this earlier. I will say we went from one bike ped coordinator that kind of wasn't necessarily their main job. It was a main part of their job, but we went from one bike coordinator back in, I guess it was 1997. Now we have two dedicated people on the team that all they do every day is they work on active transportation. And so, we've doubled that. And, but it's not just those two. We have other folks around the agency that also, jump on board with them and help them however needed. So whether it be, sign expertise or how do we get better at our traffic signals with active transportation? We have people that are experts in that area. So I don't want to make it sound like it's just two people and that's it. It's two people that are championing it, that are making sure that the right people are coming to the table to really get this, get all these niches across the finish line. I just highlighted some things here. Safety, of course, number one, getting design guidance out there. And again, it's not just for us, it's for the municipalities too. How can we help them? We've got some smart people just within the state of Vermont that are working on this. We can help them so they don't have to hire smart people. Complete Streets, I think it speaks for itself. It's been it was a wonderful it was law that got passed and is certainly a major part of what we do. Accessibility, equity, helping our most vulnerable also get from where they need to get to. And of course, legislation policy that probably speaks for itself. We are here. We've been here for the last several years. Several years talking about different initiatives with the legislature and policy side. Of course, behavior change, not just education behavior for the actual active transportation folks that are out there using those modes, but also the drivers. We got to educate the drivers on how they need to drive more safely, as we share the road. We're also constantly reviewing plans, whether it be Act 250 or our own internal plans. And then finally, the data side. We have the data with active transportation. It's challenging. With cars and vehicles, they're going much further, so we can set up traffic, some count locations, and we can, on the interstate, for example, and you can get really good counts of vehicles. But with active transportation, people aren't walking, 30 miles, they're walking maybe a mile or less. And so you really have to figure out where you can strategically, count those individuals. So, but this is something that we're working through and working, even using technology, and how can we use technology to get some more accurate data. But we do that. We work with regional planning commissions on those counts. And then finally, the asset data, data just on the network. What are the different corridors, whether it be where you're walking, running, or be a bicycle corridor, and how can we get connectivity with those corridors, and how can we just advance this mission and make it more seamless? So that's part of our data set as well that we're working on building, and in some cases have already built. Just a kind of a slide, just kind of showing you guys the external partners. Again, I've tried to drive that point home with you all, and I think I have. If you see sort of the halo side here, that these are all sort of the external entities that we work with. So you'll see we work with the towns, the RPCs, I've mentioned them, other state agencies, ACCD, Department of Health, Department of Public Services, all of these entities we work with very closely. The Vermont Highway Safety Alliance, because again, safety is a major part of our vulnerable road users, of which, of course, active transportation are. And then finally, Local Motion, other entities out there, very strong partners with Local Motion, and we are with them and they are with us. And then, of course, out of the halo is sort of just what I wanted to show you, the internal side. We don't just work with designers. We work with planners. We work with our maintenance teams. We work with the folks that are actually giving out permits and stuff for expansion on our roads. So the list goes on and on. So I'm not going to go into tremendous detail on this, but I just kind of want to drive the point home that we are not in a bubble in this in this environment of active transportation. And then finally, I will say what you see in the halo here kind of primarily makes up our what we call the Vermont Active Transportation Alliance. And the alliance that I'm referring to is one where we work with all these other entities that I just mentioned to make sure that we're all in lockstep with one another. So if we all work together, then we can share resources, we can share the vision with one another, and it just helps us more efficiently and effectively just get these this mode of traffic safer and smoother traveling, I guess, for those users. So that's on a monthly basis. We work with them, and those meetings, I want to say we've had, for the last year, we met monthly. And I think that two of them got canceled, and it might have been because of weather. I don't know, but 10 out of 12 of those months we got together, and we had some very good conversations, and that have brought fruit to this whole side of our transportation network. With that, can entertain some questions or whatever your pleasure is, sir.
Get to all of our questions through the presentation. Representative White, please.
This might be a little granular, but in talking about promoting bicycling and pedestrian use of roads, and you referred to a maintenance section, department. Are there standards for how to maintain roads so that they are conducive to biking? And I think about Route 100 in the spring, covered with dirt and and it's not a safe way for a road bike to travel. So, and I've had this question in the past, and I never knew who to share it with.
I have an answer for you.
Okay.
Yes, there are standards. And so what we do is, again, I go back to data. So we have data, and we know what our major bike corridors are. And so that data is used then for us to work with our maintenance folks. So when they do the road sweeping on our shoulders, for example, we target those first. And so they're able to go out there and get those roads swept, so that when the spring hits and everybody wants to go out on their bike, myself included, and get out there and get exercise, you can do that safely. I'm not going to promise that we do what we can to get it done as quickly as possible, of course. But then we did then target we kind of ratcheted back based on the data, and then we get the other sort of other roads that also have bike traffic, but we just try to get the ones with the most volume first, to serve that batch of the public first. But
and if the public is feeling like there's an area that isn't being addressed, what's the best way for them to reach out?
I would say go to use that. There is a tool on our website where they can reach out directly, and then we can get that information to the right people. So if they write an email, hey, I bike on this route, just to have, if you have a constituent, they could just describe that area so we know. And we will absolutely, certainly will respond to them and let them know what the plan is, so they'll be aware. And in many cases, I think that we actually, try to actually make a difference out there and do something about it. But we'd have to entertain them as they come in, of course. But
Is
yeah.
that on the 511?
Or
is that a different?
It's a different site. I believe you can access it right from the main homepage. There's a place there for inquiries.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, Josh, thank you very much. Appreciate your time in all the areas. There's a lot of questions. We'll be back at 1:00 to continue. The secretary mentioned some of those materials used in that new project. We'll hear about that at 1:00.